Cheers! Happy Friday,
Happy
friends.
Friday!
I am back after being MIA for a few weeks. Work has been insane at C2S, but
we've been surviving without you.
Yeah, surviving and thriving.
That's right.
So we have some exciting news that we're sharing today and that we're talking about. Noah is 4 years clean. Woo! Just so exciting. And it also is, this will be 7 years, so 7 years ago this weekend he would have went to prison.
Yep. And 7 years ago this weekend, you would have.
Oh yeah, it's mine and Jamie's wedding anniversary, so
There
we
we
got
go.
married. So these are two things that I'll never forget, because the weekend we got married was the same weekend that Noah's going off to prison, which he's written a lot about on the blog, and I've also written about it, so we'll link back to that in today's blog post that we're actually going to reference. And this is what we're talking about today, is Noah's 4 years of being clean.
Yep.
And
Clean
kind of
and
how
sober,
that came
baby.
to be. So one of the biggest things for me that I've always just been shocked by, and that I still can like hardly wrap my mind around, is the fact that 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Noah was in prison. So he's 4 years clean, which means that he was still using in prison. And so, yeah, I just want to talk about that a little bit and ask you some questions on it. Noah wrote a blog post about this as well, so you guys can go and check that out. We'll leave link in bio for that. But yeah, so doing drugs in prison, can you fill us in? Like,
Yep.
how, why, what, all the things?
I mean, clearly drugs are everywhere. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're in school. It doesn't matter if you're at college. It doesn't matter if you're in a small town, a big town. It doesn't matter if you're in the free world or if you're in jail, prison. If there's a way to get drugs into somewhere, people are going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Now, whether that is smuggling it in themselves, whether that is paying somebody who has some power to bring it in, people can be influenced.
And another thing that just throughout this experience and him being in prison that always just fascinated me too was that when it came to alcohol, like there was ways that they were able to make their own alcohol if they wanted to do that. So yeah, getting drugs in, or if they wanted a cell phone, there was ways to get cell phones in, and a number of other things that weren't legal. So yeah, that always just kind of like, you know, just for what we had to go through with like emails and sending them letters and getting them rejected to us, and it's like all these things that are so
irritating, but it's because somebody used that system to get drugs in.
Yeah, so that makes sense, you know. So, but I would always be like, okay, how is it? You know, this is so difficult, but yet you are able, if you want it, to have drugs and alcohol and do these other things in prison. So yeah, so that's just crazy. But so kind of talk about the day. So 4 years ago, that day, like what was the turning point? Did you wake up that morning and say like, hey, I'm going to be clean? Was there a pivotal moment? Like why 4 years ago today?
There wasn't. And that's the thing for me is I didn't wake up on September 1st, 2016 and say, I'm done. I've had enough. I mean, in a way I did, because I was in this environment where I was just like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And I was 3 years into a 10-year prison sentence, of which I would serve about 7 years. So I would be getting out right about now if it wasn't for me getting out early from COVID.
I just deleted that on my calendar for next week, I think it was.
Oh, would be my release?
I had a thing on my calendar that said Noah's out, and like all this exciting. And I was like, he's already out.
Already out.
So
yeah. So I would have been getting out now, but so I was 3 years in, and I had enough of prison time. Did I think I was done for good doing drugs? I didn't wake up that day and said, you know what, I'm done using.
Yeah.
But I did say, I'm just not going to use for now. And I didn't want to extend that stay in prison any longer. So I just decided to put it on hold. That's it.
Okay.
That's the honest answer. I had every intention after September 1st, 2016 to continue my use later once I got out of prison, because I didn't want to lose good time. I didn't want to stay any longer, and that was really where I was at.
Yeah, and you kind of talk about that in the blog post too. I encourage you guys to go read, but even when you went to prison, you had the mentality that you were going to use again. You wanted to do your time, you wanted to get out, and that you had said in the beginning that going to prison
I didn't go to prison for using drugs.
I love that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I went to prison for selling drugs.
Yeah, not for
when
using
really the main reason I was selling drugs, even if it's not why I started selling drugs, but it was all around my using and my thinking.
Yeah.
The same thought process that got me to use drugs in that first place back when I was 13, 14 years old was the same thinking that let me say, hey, it's a good idea to start selling drugs, even though I knew the consequences were prison. I knew the consequences were being taken away from my family.
So over these last 4 years, that was really the time where you started treatment, you started realizing or saying that you had a problem, you accepted it, you admitted it. So that was kind of, I think, the turning point when you've been working through these things within the last 4 years.
Well, so I started going to treatment 2 years ago. So I had that 2 years in between when I decided to put it on hold and when I actually started going to treatment. And it was, and even a year into treatment, I still had the thought in the back of my head that I can drink again. I eventually probably could eat some ecstasy again. And those are those same, now they're just cravings. Then they were reservations, like I could still do this eventually. So the biggest thing was you guys got my attention with those victim impact letters. When you guys wrote those victim impact letters,
which we'll link to all these in the blog post,
really telling me, you know, the impact and how you felt during those times. Like I didn't think about how you were worried about me when I went to prison and I was thrown in the hole during your honeymoon. So I'm sorry for that. I wasn't thinking about you. I was thinking about me. And in those types of things, that when you guys brought that up in those letters, that's really what got my attention. So, you know, you guys are awesome for that. And
so those are probably the few things too that you're always reminding yourself when you're trying to stay clean. You have these cravings. You talk about in the blog post and so many other posts of like situations you were in that literally I read and almost make me go and throw up, because I'm just like, I can't even imagine being in an environment like that, like such a gross, toxic environment. And no, I even asked him today, you know, if he looks at this now and thinks like, oh, that was so gross. And he's like, no.
I said, no, that still looks like fun to me. Using drugs, having sex with complete strangers. I mean,
I'm like, that just
those
shows
are still
too.
craving things. So it shows I still have a ways to go. I'm not to the point where I'm like, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to use drugs anymore. I don't want to party anymore. No, I still want to do those things. I just am able to say, okay, if I do those things, this is where it's going to eventually lead me.
Well, so that leads us to another point. Like, being sober means being free. Like, you are set free. And even when you talk about a lot of posts, like insecurities, self-doubt, it's not always about drugs and alcohol that we know that our readers and both of us face are, you know, a lot of things that people are facing. But staying clean is that's freedom. So what does freedom mean to you? And I love how you end the blog post talking about this. So I just want to make sure we touch on it.
It's just all these things. I can have so much, and I could have had so much in my life already if I would have just stayed away from drugs. And if I would have stayed away from using drugs, I would have probably stayed away from selling drugs. I would have probably stayed away from prison. I would probably have a better relationship with my family. I would have, you know, a better relationship with some of my past friends that were healthy relationships.
I always say too, though, I want to know, this is probably...
But you never know.
Yeah. I always say what we went through with you also, in my opinion, made us stronger as a family.
True. Absolutely. I agree.
Not that anyone should go through what we went through.
But that's life, and you learn from stuff. And even though I went through had this terrible experience, and you guys had this terrible experience with me, because it wasn't just me in prison, it was you guys in prison as well. But the thing about freedom is, in being clean, being sober, you know, it just means I have this opportunity. Because like you said, I've wrote a lot about self-doubt and insecurities and all these things, and people always say, you know, stop beating yourself up. But here's the deal. I can't help the way I think.
Right.
And that's why I'm talking about it, is because I'm trying to overcome these. I can't just overcome these by saying, okay, I'm gonna start being a confident person today. No, it is therapy, and it is
Right.
going to take years. And you know, my clean time, my sobriety, whatever you want to call it, it means I have an opportunity to have a relationship with my daughter. It means
Yeah.
I have an opportunity to have a relationship with my nieces and nephews, my brother, my sister. I have an opportunity to be successful. I have an opportunity to be productive at work. I have an opportunity to be happy.
Yeah.
And there's just, sooner or later, even if you are tricked and you're early in your drug use and you think that you are happy, you're not. And eventually that fun is going to be sucked out of your life, and you're going to be left with nothing. You're
Yeah.
either going to be dead, you're going to be in prison, or you're going to be an addict living on the street with nothing around them. Because eventually, if everybody doesn't separate themselves from you, you're going to push them away anyways.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
love
not a fun
it.
life.
It's not. And
But-
I
I'm 4 years clean, and
Yay.
yeah,
and it's awesome.
things are looking up.
I know. So it's a reason to celebrate today. So we encourage you to go read the blog post today. We also have resources on resilience-forum.com for anything else that you need, websites, other phone numbers, emails. Always send us a DM if you're going through something. And also if you want to celebrate, if you have a month sober, a week sober, a day sober, years sober, you want us to celebrate with you publicly or privately, that is what we are here for. So that's all we got. We hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.